I'm going to talk a little bit about the Graduate School of Education and its relationship to data. So this is our 100th anniversary as a school. We used to be a department, and the Board of Trustees, recognizing the significance of education, turned the department into a school. And 100 years ago, things were very different. 5% of people graduated high school 100 years ago. Now it's up to the high 80%. And so this was very important to accomplish this because the nature of work was such that you needed a high school degree. Now you see this issue showing up around college. The same thing. The nature of college is, nature of work is such that we expect people to go to college, and we want to get as many bodies in there as possible. In the K-12 space, new problems and challenges have arisen besides getting people into schools. One of them is that we're not very successful at reaching all learners. We've been very good at reaching the mythical average learner, but we're not so good at reaching dyslexic, or a child who comes in not speaking English, or a child from poverty. And so this is one of the big challenges. A second big challenge for us is how can we prepare people to thrive in a dynamic future?
I'm going to grab some orange juice.
And that's very relevant for this group. Jobs are going to change. We're very good at training people for mastery, right? But mastery is kind of the wrong concept if you're going to keep changing jobs and have to keep learning. So I think there are reasons to believe we can get after both of these. How can we reach all learners, and how can we prepare people to thrive in a dynamic future? And that's because there's a number of changes that are occurring in what we can do in education. One is the science of learning, including things like neuroscience. So we're getting more precise on what are the right things to do for people under which conditions. Technology, we're able to teach in ways we just simply couldn't before. For example, computer simulations of glacier melting, and you get to interact with that. You just couldn't do that before. And so this is something fundamentally new. And then data. Data. So the social sciences are being changed by data, and I think it's going to allow us to do a lot. So the Graduate School of Education has made data sciences a high priority. There's a faculty task force right now that's trying to figure out how we sort of get after a number of questions. One is, what educational data analysts should we produce? So we create, say, PhDs, masters, who go out and will analyze data. And how should we do that? What data can catalyze research, which is what I'm going to talk about most here. How do we prepare K-12 students for a world of data? Right? This is something we haven't done before. And then, what are the ethical considerations in K-12 data use? So that as we get more precise, we may become too good at sorting people. So the GSE already has a major footprint in the collection and use of data. So we have very large data sets, largely from school districts. So we have data sets. One data set is from Sean Reardon. He went out and he collected every single child's test score in the U.S. year over year. And he managed to make them comparable. So different states use different tests. And he found a way to make it so he could compare all those tests together. And this is a pretty amazing data set. He can plot it against the parent's socioeconomic status. And the correlation between student achievement and SES is just, it's like this. You can just see it. High SES, you're 2 grade levels above. Low SES, you're 2 grade levels below the average. It's a very tight correlation. At the same time, you look at that data and you can see that some school districts, despite being in places of poverty, are raising their children very fast. So we can look at these data and sort of figure out, oh look, these school districts are making a big difference. How are they doing this? How are they making it so that poverty is not fake? So this is a great data set. A different example is partnerships. So we have partnerships with San Francisco Unified School District and Sequoia, which is the high school district here, and all the feeder elementary schools. And this is interesting. The deal is they let us look at their data, and they tell us what questions they want us to ask. And so getting these things started is quite interesting. So doing it in Sequoia, these elementary school districts come in with boxes of data. right? They're just boxes of data. And they're sort of like, I think there's another one in the closet over there. And so they haven't sort of built the infrastructure to use data to make decisions. San Francisco Unified, we've worked that out with them. So a great example is the superintendents are trying to decide whether they should maintain an ethnic studies course. And so 10 to 12 teachers worked to create this ethnic studies course. So it was a lot of work, a lot of labor, and the school district was trying to decide, do we keep supporting this or do we cut it? And so they gave us this question, and Tom D., who's an economist at the School of Education, looked at the existing data they had. It was just sitting there, and it was online. You could find it. He showed that the students who took the ethnic studies course actually were improving their grades in all their other classes as well. Right? Their attendance was better. So this was exciting. This supported local decision-making for the school district. They now have ethnic studies courses in almost all the schools. But it was generalizable knowledge, so that now school districts across the nation are starting to do ethnic studies courses. So these are two examples. These are administrative data. It's very coarse. It's like grades, attendance, classes that you've taken. There's another kind of data, which I personally work with, is high volume, high flow data that comes out of people interacting and watching how they learn along the way. And so MOOCs are a very bad source of data. It's just very poor quality. So imagine you're making a MOOC, you're putting in a bunch of test questions. You have no theory about those test questions. You're just putting in questions and to see if people do well. Turns out that's really hard data to work with because it doesn't have any properties. It's just someone thought of a question to ask. So what I've been working on is making 10-minute games. These are little games that you play on the iPad, and they're designed to be assessments in the background. So for example, in about 5 minutes, we can tell if a child has an attitude where they just want to get it done versus do they want to understand. And we can pick this up while they're playing a game. They don't know we're doing this, so there's some ethical considerations there. Turns out this difference between, oh, I just want to get it done, I just want to win, versus I want to understand, is a very good predictor of how they're doing in school. So we can use lots of games like this. Another one is checks to see whether kids seek praise or do they seek constructive criticism. Right? And the kids who are seeking praise aren't doing quite as well in school as the kids who are seeking constructive criticism. So this is an interesting, very precise kind of data. The purpose of this data is not to evaluate the individual. So I know a lot of companies are after this. Can we do, talent evaluation with better assessments? The purpose of this is really to help teachers, school districts determine whether they're preparing their students to continue learning when they're not being told exactly what to do. And this is the big thing for the future of the workforce, right? You have to solve this problem in K-12 to make people want to keep learning. I don't know about you, but you go to conferences, professional development conferences, and tell me which is more important to you, the learning or the drinking, right? Most of you, it's the collaborate, it's getting to chat with people, it's not the learning part. And so you have to really get this built in early. And this happens in the K-12. A good example of this comes from Professor Prashant Loyolka, who does comparative studies of, say, China, Russia, the US, India. And what he found is that Chinese students on average coming into college are much higher than the US on STEM. But once they get into college, the Chinese students don't gain anything. They stay right where they are, and the US students start to move forward. So the question is, what happened in the K-12 experience that gets the US students seemingly further behind, but more ready to adapt and learn when they go into the new context of college? And so to solve that problem, we need to get better using data at understanding the kinds of processes that people use while they go about learning, so we can then intervene and try and help them do that. So, thank you.